Welcome to the Private Practice Pro podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping therapists cultivate success. Here's your host, Kelley Stevens.
This podcast is sponsored by Simple Practice. I've been using Simple Practice since 2016, which has helped me run a smooth and profitable private practice over the years. It has simplified everything from scheduling to billing, giving me a better balance between the work I'm so passionate about and the family time I'm not willing to miss out on. Check out the episode notes to get a free 2-month trial of Simple Practice, my preferred all-in-one HIPAA-compliant solution. Welcome back, everyone, to the Private Practice Pro podcast. Sara, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Tell us where in the world you're sitting, where your practice is. Give us your whole overview.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here. My practice is based in Teaneck, New Jersey, which is in Bergen County, so like kind of North Jersey. But we're a group private practice where I'm the owner of it, and then I have a few different therapists. We all specialize in working with teens, as well as adults, and a big specialty of the practice is group therapy.
Awesome.
We are not only in New Jersey, we're physically in New Jersey, but we're all licensed in New York as well. And then some of us are licensed also in Florida, Connecticut, Massachusetts. And so we're in various different places. And the reason for that is because a lot of our kids that we see go off to college,
right,
and then need more. So we've been collecting licenses so that we can keep supporting our clients.
Oh my God. Okay. So I can relate to that. We should come back to that, of the element of working with teens, going off to school and licensing. So let's remember that we're going to come back to that. But you also do some consultation for therapists. So tell us a little bit about that, and then we're going to get into your practice.
Sure. So I, in addition to doing therapy and having a practice and all that, I also offer consultation to therapists who are looking to either start a private practice or start a group practice, or especially my main thing that I consult on is putting together groups in private practice.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of what I'm known for in the community. I run workshops on the topic. I present at conferences on this topic, as well as some other group related topics. And I'm going to have a course hopefully soon about putting together groups in private practice and all the things that come with that, because there's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different things I think that a lot of us don't think about, whether it's like having the right intake forms or group rules or, any of that. So I'm excited to hear that you're going to have a resource, and we'll make sure to link that. And then for anyone who wants to consult about opening a group, whether it's a teen group or an adult therapy group, right? They can find the info on your website, which we'll also link.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast is I realized, even though my specialty is working with teens, I haven't had somebody who's really an expert on working with teens on the podcast, which is like so crazy. And so I thought today we could talk a little bit about your journey toward opening a teen practice. And I guess we should just start with what made you decide you wanted to work with teenagers?
Yeah. So in my training, I'm a social worker. And so I was trained as a child and adolescent therapist, starting in my internship.
Yeah.
And so that was where I had a lot of my experience. And then my first job out of grad school, I was placed in the child department of the hospital. And so I just, that was sort of where, and I always felt, I was working with ages like 0 to 21, and I always felt most drawn to the teens and the young adults.
Do you have an age range that you tend to do you tend to work with younger teen? I know some people will work 9 to 13 versus 13 to 16 or whatever.
Yeah. So me personally, I love working with that middle school awkward time kind of age. So 12 is 12-year-old girls.
Yeah.
That's been a really fun age. But then I will work all the way up. And I see actually a lot of adult women too, who are in their 20s and 30s, especially given my like hours, I can't
Yeah.
see that many teens anymore. So
Yeah.
I see a lot of adult women too.
It's funny how that happens in a teen practice where I don't know about you, but I started seeing teens prior to having kids. And I used to work kind of like 1 o'clock till sometimes like 8 or 9 o'clock. But I'd start really late in the day. And then slowly as I had my own family, I was like, wait, this is like not sustainable. And slowly moved it. So did you, because you have 3 kids, so how did it work like when you started having kids with your schedule and seeing teenagers?
Yeah. So I had my first when I was still working at this hospital position where I was in a pediatric office, actually, like a pediatrician's office, working as their in-house mental health person.
Oh,
So I
that's
was
cool.
seeing, it was in the collaborative care model, if you're familiar with that. So so it was great. And I got a lot of experience working with all different types of like presenting issues and all different ages. And so I actually worked kind of like 9 to 5 hours there.
Oh, that's kind of nice.
And so the majority of my clients were younger kids and a lot of parent training. And as I had my own, I was like, I am getting so burnt out from playing with other people's kids.
Yeah.
I really like, I want to reserve that energy for my own. And so I would see a lot of teenagers, starting the second school was over and it was a community hospital and their schools were like next door. So they would just come right over from school. So I saw a good amount of teens. And as my kids got older, I just felt like I can't work with younger ones anymore. And so my age that I was seeing kind of shifted older. And my schedule also shifted. So I was working, I always kept like a 9 to 5, 9 to 6 kind of schedule. I had a lot of like nanny type childcare. And though still I wasn't really working evenings. So I would still end work around like 6 p.m. And that's why I started running groups, was because I wanted to be able to see more teenagers. And that was a good way to see more, is to get 5 or 6 of them all at the same time. So so that was one of the biggest reasons why I started group therapy. And then my oldest is in kindergarten. And so I had to switch my hours so that I'm picking them up way earlier. We don't have daycare hours anymore.
I know. Okay, this is like one of the injustices that I like recently learned about kindergarten. All of a sudden, gonna have less childcare than I did. I was like, but then it's nice because then I have some alone time with my oldest. I don't know. But yeah, it's definitely wild. What did you find? So one thing I found was during the pandemic, seeing teens, obviously during COVID, they were at home doing school. And so during COVID, was able to see teenagers more throughout the day.
During the day.
Because they would be able to pop on Zoom. And then I did find that even after COVID, my clients seem to just have a little bit more flexibility in their school days. And I don't know if that's more just I'm seeing older teens who have more electives, or that there's more of an emphasis on mental health. But I haven't had as many issues as I thought I would scheduling post-COVID with teens.
Yes, I see that. Another factor is, I think, when you have a good, and I know we're going to talk about referrals and where they come from, but when you have really strong word of mouth referrals, people will make it work to see you no matter what your availability is. So when people call me and they say, we must work with you, I say, well, these are my hours. And they say, okay, let me talk to the school and see when they'll let my daughter Zoom with you from, which class would be best for her to miss to Zoom with you from. So I'm finding that, it's not really a problem as long as you stay really clear. Because if you're like, oh, yeah, I'll see you at 8 p.m., then why would they try to see you earlier?
Oh, 100%. If you stay clear about your, one thing I've found, do you with doing some collaboration with the school? So sometimes when I have a teen who's really struggling in school, I will also be collaborating with their school counselor. And oftentimes that school, and if I tell the school counselor, I'm done at 6, or I'm done at 5 even nowadays, I'm done at 3:30 a lot of the time. Because my kids need to be picked up. But a lot of times the school counselor will tell me it makes less work for us because that's the kid who's coming into the office. That's the kid who, is sitting in the counselor's office talking it through. And if the counselor can say, yeah, you can take that hour that you would have had class where you would have been sitting in my office anyway, and you can sit in my office and Zoom your own therapist, that takes a lot of work off of them. And it's, I think, something we don't think about as therapists because we think of like kind of a typical schedule for kids. But a lot of times those kids are sitting in the school counselor's office anyway, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's how I've been doing it. And I think COVID helped normalize. Well, COVID helped with Zoom. So with teens, we've gone back to doing a lot of in-person work, but no one's coming in the middle of their school. I mean, I've heard that people do this, but a lot of the teens I see don't go to school locally to where my office is. And so they will just Zoom with me from
school.
their counselor's office, from school. And so COVID like made Zoom normal. I think before that it was less. It was like, well, how would we do that? How would we make that work? And now it's just Zoom. That's the answer. So and then also I will say, as I've gotten more progressed in my career, my clients who were high schoolers are now college students and they're still seeing me.
I know.
Our schedules have aligned better now.
Isn't that the greatest, though? I mean, I feel like I have some clients who I started seeing when they were like sophomores in high school, and now they're in graduate school.
That's awesome.
It is so, I mean, isn't that like, it's so wild just to see kids that you knew were really struggling and they've like, you know, gone on and launched adult lives. It's so wild.
Yeah. It's so great. And so but from a scheduling point of view, it's helpful that they no longer need those high school kind of rigidity hours. And now it's like, oh, like you have a break for 2 hours on Tuesdays at 10. Let's meet then.
I feel like I've had a fair number too of sessions recently where it's like my college age clients who maybe I started seeing in high school or somehow they knew me through being a teenager. And then now I'm like Zooming them and they're in their dorm room or they're walking around because their roommates in their dorm. You know, it's such a different kind of vibe. But okay, so let's talk a little bit about getting referrals as a therapist who sees teens, whether that's for your groups or just for your private practice. So what do you find is the best way for you to market your practice?
Yeah. So there's a lot of different ways. The main ones that I utilize. So my main overall kind of like thing that I did at the beginning was that you actually, I think, posted a reel about this one time. And I was like, this is exactly what I did when I was first starting. So I started out in a group private practice as the group director there before I went out on my own. And so I got a lot of experience just like playing around with marketing. And I was like, well, I want to get individual clients, but that's not really happening so quickly. So let me start marketing groups. And I think reaching out on listservs with like an offering of like, this is what I've got going on was a really great way to introduce myself to the community and get referrals. And even if people were not necessarily referring people to me, but interested enough, I would see if they would be interested in having a 15-minute call to learn more about the group and to hear more about their client. So I would make relationships with these like potential referral sources. And often they would end up, and sometimes on the phone, they'd be like, you know, actually the client I had in mind originally wasn't the right fit, but I actually have a different client who I think would be really good. And so just like emailing, so listservs are something that some people are like really into the listserv game and some people don't know anything about it. So I actually on my website created like a freebie to add to my my like mailing list, like to get named. So, and that freebie it's for people in the New York and New Jersey like area. So anyone listening, if they would want to get in on this,
we'll put it in the show notes.
Look this up. But it's basically like a database of all the listservs that you can join in the area.
Oh, that's a great resource.
So I'm in a ton of listservs. It's actually kind of overwhelming how many. But you both see people looking for therapists or groups or whatever coming in, and you're able to advertise your services. And I don't think that saying like, hey, I'm a therapist, I have availability. I don't know how effective that is, honestly. But if you say, hey, I've got this teen group for girls ages 14 to 16, and we focus on body image and depression, whatever, like people will think, oh, I have a client that would totally benefit from that.
Oh, 100%.
And then I'll offer in the email, like reach out to me if you want to chat about, like consult about your client to see if they might be a good fit. And so we're really, like that's my best. That's a really good way to just let people know about you.
Yeah.
And then often I find whenever I do these lister of blasts about our groups, we often get an influx of individual client referrals coming in, mostly because people are remembering we exist from letting them know about our groups.
Well, and
So that's one way.
I mean, I think that like cannot be stressed enough, because this is definitely one of those ways of marketing yourself that actually isn't really marketing yourself, but it is, of like, I will tell people like sometimes, I don't know if this is true, but I feel like sometimes therapists get a little territorial of clients. Okay. Not always, but sometimes. And I think a group can be a way that feels really disarming to connect with people. So instead of calling them or list serving them or whatever, email blasting people and saying, you know, refer to me because I have this individual practice, if you are able to say, hey, I have this group resource that would be great for your clients, and they're going to stay with you, but they're going to come into this group once a week. It takes so much of the, like, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't feel as sticky, or, you know, like it's a way for you to be.
It's collaborative.
Yeah. And it's great for the client, right? Because they are surrounded with a better circle of support. And I think it's good all around. And even then I find, like, because I used to do the marketing for an outpatient teen IOP. And so this is what we did was groups for teens. And obviously an IOP level, but same sort of concept. And that was something we stressed all the time in our marketing, was the client can stay with you for individual therapy. We're not trying to take your clients away from you, even if, like, whatever. And but we can also collaborate on cases. And then when we would provide that really good collaboration on cases, inevitably people would start referring individual clients because they had a good experience. They know that you're great at working with teens. They know. And, you know, I don't know about you, but I think so much of working with teens is surrounding them with multiple people who support them, not just always one solo therapist, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And then, like the collaboration, the ongoing collaboration is actually like my best marketing tool.
Totally.
And part of when I teach people about, like, in my groups and private practice workshop, I will teach them about, like, group engagement. And part of that is keeping, like, we collaborate, we speak once a month to the individual therapist in addition to the parents and the teen themselves. Like, we do a check-in with them every month. But the therapist, that's the most important part, to not only have cohesion among, you know, what the client is getting for therapy, but also to be able to just let them know how great you are at being a therapist and being a group therapist. And my top referral sources are people who have had people in my groups. They're always reaching out to me, either, hey, do you have a group for XYZ client? Or I have an individual referral for you, or whatever. Like, it's the ones that I've built. And it's not like we're building this very collegial kind of relationship. Like, we're friends, we text, we've got to that level where we've become like work friends, because we're working so closely to help the same person.
100%. And so, you know, I think therapists who work with teens also are kind of like, we're a special breed in the sense that, like, I don't know, like, I really care about the kids I work with. And some of the kids that I work with are really struggling, and maybe their families are really struggling. They don't have anyone in their corner. And so when you're able to have a team, whether it's like a group therapist, an individual therapist, or a psychiatrist, I do think in many ways you become like professional friends with people, because you're texting them at like 7:30 after you get out of a session being like, hey, this kid's going to school tomorrow. They're doing self-harm. They're doing whatever it is. We really need, someone needs to check in with them tomorrow. Who's going to call the school? Just all those points of contact mean that you're creating that like referral relationships with people without even like feeling salesy at all. I mean, you're just trying to help your clients.
I mean, you're telling them you're a human. Like, you're a human. You're a really good therapist. And you get along great with this person. You're like co-parenting this teen almost. You're like, why wouldn't they refer you? Why would you not want to refer to them if you know already you work so well with them? And that's often my, like, when I'm referring, I have a lot of psychiatrists actually that, like, we have this kind of relationship with, which is great, because there isn't that, like, oh, we're competing for the same client. And I'll tell some parents when I'm referring their teen for psychiatry, I'll say, I really want you to use either this person or that person, because me and them, we text all day. And so we could talk really easily. Like
Yeah.
it's so easy to get on the phone with them versus this random psychiatrist. I can try to build
Yes.
a relationship with them, but it might take a longer time for us to like get on the phone. And,
Yes.
you know, if your daughter or son's having a crisis,
Right.
if your teen's having a crisis, like I say daughter just because I work
Right.
with mostly girls,
Yeah.
but
Same.
anyone, if your teen is having a crisis, like I can just get on the phone with her
Right.
psychiatrist right away. Like we don't need to wait for like their front desk to email me
Right.
back, you know? So that's also a draw, I think, for parents to be
Oh,
like, okay,
yeah.
like you've got the team in place already. We trust you.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I always feel, I wonder if this is how you feel. Like sometimes I would have new families if I was the first point of contact versus like coming in from a referral source, where I would say to them, like, look, I know that you might not necessarily know me super well, but like, trust me when I say I want you to work with this family therapist. I want you to work with this psychiatrist or this parent coach or whatever. Because like, I feel like when you're in a community, you kind of know the people that work really well with teens. And then you know the people who just take teens on the sly every once in a while, even though it's not their specialty. And sometimes that can do a lot more harm than good. And so once you put together that team of people that really does good work with teens, like I always am trying to tell parents, like, please, please, please trust me that this family therapist, like you could have 3 sessions with her versus 15 sessions with somebody else.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And then partially, so, like sometimes because I have a group practice, I'll have people within my practice that would be a good fit. Either, you know, I think that they would really benefit from a DBT group, or I think that whatever, like we've got 4 different groups for teens, or five different groups for teens right now.
Right.
And a group for college kids. Like we've got a lot of options. And so often I'll also think about like, oh, is there a group that might be a good fit? And again, it's not even about like the marketing or the sales, like getting another client. It's really just about like, what is best? How can we make this kid have a better outcome right now? And then sometimes also like, oh, you know, the parents might need their own therapy, and I have therapists on staff who can help with that too. So
you have a parent group at all too, or mostly one-on-one?
We don't have a parent group right now. Maybe it's less thought. But there's a lot of thoughts.
I know, right?
So.
I feel like whenever people come on the podcast, I'm like, why don't you do this and this and this? And then sometimes people will tell me like, you need to pump the brakes. Like I'm doing 90.
No, I'm the same way. People tell me I overwhelm them sometimes with like my like how much I believe in their capacity to like expand what they have to offer.
100. I have this, you know, like I always feel like, you know, we all have that friend where when you go shopping with them, they're like, get that outfit, get that outfit. I feel like I'm the friend who I'm like, start that business. Like, and then people walk away, they're like, what happened? You know, but usually they're glad.
It's so funny.
I feel like usually my friends are
I'm in a
stoked.
peer consultation group, and they all joke that I'm like their Oprah. Like I'm always like, you raise your rates, and you raise your rates, and you raise your rates. And they all are like, yeah, we all raised our rates because of Sara, and now we're making more money. And it's all because of Sara. I'm like, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'll be your hype girl any day of the week.
I mean, I think it's so important to be that friend. I literally like every time I go get my hair cut, I'm telling my hairdresser, like, you gotta, like, what are you doing? You need to raise. And she's like, why are you telling me this? It's making it more expensive for me. And I'm like, if you're thriving and we're together, like, we're all good, you know?
Yeah.
But
I do the same thing with service industry. Like, why are you charging so low?
100%.
You need to charge what you're worth.
Yeah, like, why don't you have a Google reviews page? Like, why aren't you on Instagram? What do you do? Yeah. Anyway, okay. So in terms of the groups, do you offer them in person or virtual?
All of our groups are virtual.
Nice. So how does it work? Like when a teen comes in, or how many kids are in the group? Like, how does that all go down?
Yeah. So we cap the groups at 6.
Nice.
16.
Nice.
My college group is like 8, capped at 8, but right now we have 6. And I've done that just because virtually it's like harder to have more than that in a space. And because we're all licensed in New York and New Jersey, our group members are all in either New York or New Jersey. And that for me, my college groups are like wherever they go to college, where I'm licensed. Right. And what was your question?
No, that was it, of whether they're virtual or not. And, you know, I think we said also we were going to, I know we're jumping around, but we were going to come back to what do you do when you've seen a teen for a while and they go off to college? And how does that all, you know, I know there's like the kind of official ways and the unofficial ways. And so I'm wondering how it goes in your practice. Like, let's say you've seen someone and they're going to a state you're not licensed in.
I think it really just depends on our work
Yeah.
together. And if it's like, there's so much more work to be done, where it's like we really have momentum.
Yeah.
And also how easy or hard it is to get licensed in that state. In our area, it's actually really common, like the states I'm licensed in at this point, it's pretty common that people will go to college in one of those states.
Right.
So like New York, Connecticut,
Right.
New Jersey, Connecticut, or Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Like those are our Florida. Those are all
Right.
kind of states that people go back and forth to. Or like New York, because New York is so big, people will go to like upstate
Right.
New York, you know, for college, or Long Island when
Right.
they are from Westchester.
Right.
So it hasn't been so hard. I've had people move away to like random places in America
Yeah.
where I'm like, I'm not going to get licensed.
Yeah.
You know, and we'll end our work.
Right.
But those people also usually we didn't have like such a close or like long-standing therapeutic relationship.
I know it's a tough one.
So-
I feel like I've had the same where, like, essentially sometimes what I'll do, and I don't know, you know, this is the unofficial advice, check with your attorney on this one, is a lot of times my clients' permanent residence actually is still in California. So let's say they're away at school, I'll see them in person when they're home. And typically I'll only do this with clients, obviously, who are not seeing me very often. Maybe they're seeing me once a month or something like that. So the majority of their sessions are happening in California when they're home. And then maybe they'll have one or two sessions throughout the semester at school on Zoom, as long as like the, you know, their home address is still their parents' house, you know. But I would say the number of cases I've done that on in the last few years is like 2. I can think
also
of who
during
they are.
COVID.
Yeah, and they were
like during
COVID.
COVID,
Yeah.
things were really loose
Right.
with that. So I had some clients that were like in college in different
Yeah.
states, and I just looked into it, and COVID was like, that's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the laws were so different that
I know.
I didn't need to get licensed in those states. So it really just depends on, now I think everything's back
Yeah.
to like needing to be licensed, but yeah.
And, you know, one thing I will talk to my clients a lot of times about too, and like I have a similar situation where so many kids from California go to college in California and the UC system. And so typically it's not an issue.
True.
But if they go out of state, a lot of times I'll tell people like, it's really nice. I know you want to stay doing like this piece of work with me in therapy, but it's really nice to have another adult, an older adult than they are at that point, in the city that you live in who knows you.
Yeah.
Because often when you're
Yeah.
a college freshman, like you're just surrounded by other college freshmen. All of a sudden you go from having all these adults kind of watching over you to expected to be an adult. And I think it can
Yeah.
sometimes be a really good time to transition out of therapy.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I'll try to kind of like put it that way because it is hard. Like hopefully we'll eventually have, you know, national licensure. There's so many more, you know, reciprocity and things, but it does. That's a hard part of working with teens is like
It's so
that
hard.
piece
Yeah.
and saying goodbye sometimes.
Also, I feel like we could have a whole other podcast episode about going to college and becoming more of an adult and all the stuff that happens there. Because that's like a huge part of the work also. It's like parent coaching.
Yes.
around-
I know.
Yeah.
I think about it now. I started seeing teens prior to having my own kids. And I think about the fact that I don't think I fully understood like how hard that transition is for parents. You know, until like I kept on thinking like, oh, okay, you know, you got to like let go, like it's going to be fine. And now that I have my own kids, like I can't even think about it. Maybe I need to work on this in my own therapy, but like envisioning them leaving
totally
and going off to school, I'm just like I could cry right now thinking about it.
Yeah, I know. It's funny because I have these kinds of conversations with my teen clients sometimes when they're like, why do my parents always need to know where I am or always need to know my business, blah, blah, blah. And this is what I've told them. I've been like, I'm a mom, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, I've got kids. I know every time my kids poop. Like, I know about it because they're that little.
Yeah.
And I'm like wiping them.
Yeah.
Like, I know, right? And even if they're in daycare, I get a notification. Like, I know it's happening.
Same, I just
was
got
like,
one.
Your parents don't know every time you poop.
Right.
Like, they don't know, right? Like, because you're a teenager.
Right.
And it would be weird if you told them every
Right.
time, right? But like, that's the level of involvement your parents used to have with you.
Yeah.
And as you get older, like they know less information about
Right.
you, but like they were so intimately involved in your life that like now there is this, like, it's hard for them to just suddenly go from like literally wiping you to now like, oh yeah, go, and like you don't even need to tell me where you are, and you don't even need to tell me like when you're going to be home or anything. And so sometimes when I like make that comparison, they're like, oh, okay, I kind of
understand. I know. Sometimes I'll just say like, you'll understand when you have kids. I feel like I didn't even understand really, but
yeah, I didn't understand separation anxiety until I had my own kids. And then I was like, oh, I get it now. It's like the parent. So much more than the kid.
Oh, so much more. I follow this Instagram account called Grown and Flown. And which is great. If there's any teen parents listening to this, I highly recommend it. Because this is all they post about is the college transition for parents and navigating it. And and they post some reels like, you know, the mom driving her 18-year-old daughter to a doctor's appointment and being like, okay, you go on in by yourself. And the daughter's like, wait, what? I'm not going in by myself. She's like, you're 18 now. You can do it, you know, or like this kind of push-pull of teen relationships. And I think about it so often as the fact like right now our kids are the exact same age, you and me. And, you know, being able to, it's like that slow, painful let go, you know, that, and I slowly watch my kids get more and more independent. Obviously, I have a 4-month-old who's not independent at all, but like, you know, it's a part of the journey. So,
hey, therapists, are you listening to the show and thinking, I really want to launch my own private practice, but I have no idea where to start? Make sure to check out Kelley's Private Practice Roadmap course. In the course, Kelley gives you the exact steps you need to open your own thriving practice. You can find the link below in the show notes.
Okay, so what would you say, other than listservs, which we just talked about, are other ways you feel like you've effectively marketed your private practice for teens?
Yeah. So listservs is one of them, and that's been a big one. Another really great one is on Facebook.
Yeah.
And not just Facebook like groups for therapists, but actually like Facebook groups for parents. So as a parent myself, I'm in these Facebook groups, and people are always looking for therapists for their teenagers.
Yeah.
And so I'll often comment, or like, it's cute because a lot of the people who work in my practice actually are also parents, and they're also in this Facebook group. So they'll like post the practice too. Right. And so, and friends of mine who are in these groups will post it. So we get a lot of people posting it, and I'll see like in my community, people will tell me like, oh my God, your practice is everywhere. And I'm like, what do you mean everywhere? They're like, I see you all over Facebook. And so people in moms groups, it is the best way to actually find. They're always looking for resources from other moms. Right. And on Facebook, there's like the searching feature where you can search therapists. So I find like, even if someone tags my practice in a post that like I know is totally not an appropriate referral, people will be like, looking for a therapist for an adult man with OCD. Right. I'm like, we don't treat OCD, and we treat men, but like not OCD. And so, and we're not known, like we're known for treating teens. Right. And so people will, and I'll be like, thanks so much. And I'll clarify. I'll be like, we work with teens and we do this. So like, it's sort of just a marketing little thing. Yes. And it's not even for the original poster. Yes. It's just for when people are searching, they can see, oh, this is what this practice does. Right. And so a lot of our referrals, when we ask them where they learned about us, they'll say from this moms group. Right. It's like local moms group where I searched therapists for teens and your name came up on multiple posts. So that's a really good
brilliant. One. That is literally brilliant.
Yes. So that's a really good one. Also, therapist specific Facebook groups have not been a bad place to advertise, but like someone says looking for a therapist for a teen and there's 50 different people on there. So the chances of you being seen are less than if it's like a mom's group where you're one of 5 therapists. Right. So
I totally agree with that.
So that's another one.
I mean, and I think sometimes like, one thing I notice with therapist Facebook groups that can be like a helpful thing is sometimes I'll use it as a chance to network, in the sense that I'll tag another practice. So let's say like I have a couple other teen therapists who I love in my community, and someone says, who's looking for a teen therapist? I'll like give them a shout out. And then like, they'll be like, oh my God, thank you so much for tagging me. And I'll be like, of course, like, let's get coffee soon. And so it's not even like I'm necessarily promoting myself always, but it's like, it's kind of like an easy win, you know?
Yeah, totally. And I do that actually with listservs because I can never remember my colleagues like names of their practices or their like email, their website.
Yeah.
But I'll be like, oh, this sounds like a great fit for my friend so-and-so who's a psychiatrist.
Right.
I'm actually just going to copy him on this email. So then like he'll see that I did that.
Brilliant.
And then, you know, I get a lot of goodwill back and forth.
Yeah. And I mean,
way.
so much of it, you know, like I think we don't like to think about it as therapists, like, oh, you know, like, but like, how do I say this in a way that like
I scratch your back, you'll scratch mine.
like I'm sorry, like I don't, you know, like obviously if we were in like fucking real estate or something, people would be, but I do think that people notice when you think of them. Like, you know, if we have 2 very equally qualified therapists who see teens and someone's thinking like, I'm going to send one of them this referral, and maybe you've sent them referrals or you've tagged them in Facebook groups or you've mentioned them on listservs, they're going to send it to you, you know? And like, that's just kind of the real world. Even though we want to think that we always pick the best clinical fit no matter what, there's a lot of really good therapists out there. So like if you're doing that due diligence, it makes a difference. I don't know.
Yeah. And so then I guess like another one is word of mouth referrals is a big one. And those are through really like my friends. Like, so I would say anyone listening who is in grad school or in like your first job, like stay friends with your friends that you've met and meet. You know, like my closest friends from grad school and from my first jobs out of school we're all in private practice now, and we're all each other's greatest referral sources. And it's amazing because we, first of all, like really genuinely like each other. We also know each other's clinical work because we worked together and we can really vouch for one another. And so I have this one colleague who we're actually getting brunch this Friday. And we stay in touch. Yeah. And she and I are always referring like she'll refer to me like her client's partner, her client's roommate or whatever, you know. I refer all of my team, like, because she works with mostly adults, I'll refer all of my teenagers' parents to her. Right. So it's this like, you know, we have this just like family members and a lot. I have this other friend. She sees a lot of boys. She works with a lot of teenage boys. Right. She has sent me all of their sisters. So we just like, you know, and then sometimes we'll get consent where we can talk, like we can collaborate. If a lot of the times there's like family stuff and we're able to then talk with each other about like, how are you working with the family? Like, what should I be saying to them? Like, so that it's consistent messaging around family, you know, engagement. So it's great to just have those people that.
I mean, I always think too, family therapists are such a good referral source for teen therapists and vice versa, because, you know, like, the difference I think of working with teens is they are in a system. And so typically you have a lot of referrals to send out because they do have siblings and they have parents and maybe they have a cousin who you can't see and, you know, all these different things. So it makes it easier to refer out to people, which we know is like one of the fastest ways to get a referral back. Which is huge. And okay, so when you have a teenager who is maybe seeing a family therapist or seeing a psychiatrist, you're getting the releases. And then let's say you have someone who you haven't worked with before that isn't like just on, like, you have their phone number or whatever. Do you typically, how do you reach out? Like, what do you usually say, or do you call their office, or what do you kind of do?
I just email them with the consent attached and I'm just like, hey, we'll share a client, like, let's find time to talk.
Yeah. I do the same thing. I guess it like felt like a bigger question. And then like
sometimes I'll like, sometimes I'll hit it off with them on the phone. Yeah. It's like, we should talk more often because we really like each other, but also about the case.
You know, I have friends who actually did that. Okay, so I have these random tangent. I have friends who they were sharing a client they had never met in person, and they were consulting on a case, and they just really hit it off, and now they're married.
I love that. That's amazing.
Isn't that nuts?
Say it. Now they're best friends.
No, now they're married. It's like, you know, and they, like, I guess the guy was telling me recently, I shouldn't out who they are in case they don't want this on my podcast, but he was saying like, he kept on like trying to find reasons on the case to call her back. Because he was like, I just like talking to her, and she was smart and interesting about the case. And she had like no idea. And then eventually figured he asked her out or something.
That is so
I know,
funny.
Isn't that funny?
So, but I mean, also those are how the relationships develop. Yeah. Like I have this psychiatrist who over the years we've shared multiple cases. Right now we just share one case. And I texted her and I was like, we haven't spoken in forever. Yeah. And I didn't have any like big concerns about the case, but I'm like, it's been a while since we caught up. Been a while since you referred anyone to me, you know, like let's chat.
Yeah.
And like, I did have one question about the medication change that had just happened,
Right.
kind of thing. So I was like, let's chat. And we ended up talking on the phone for like 30 plus minutes. And we were just going back and forth, like consulting on other
Right.
cases with each other. Just like, oh, did you ever have this? Do you ever have that? Because she's
Right.
a child psychiatrist, and and she does a lot of therapy too. And it was just, and she even said, she's like, I feel like we could just talk all
Right.
day, you know.
And
it's
that's
nice
what
to
you
have
want.
those colleagues like
That's
that.
what you want, you
Right.
know.
Like, do you want the people who feel like really aligned?
Right.
Like you guys work similarly.
Yeah.
So yeah. One other marketing
Yeah.
thing I do, which is actually huge, is okay, I advertise in the local Jewish newspaper in my town.
Oh my God, that's so smart.
Yes. So this is like really location specific, but I'm sure that there are local papers in different places that people live. Where I live in a very Jewish community. I myself am Jewish. We service a lot of people in the Jewish community here, as well as outside of the community. But there's this newspaper called the Jewish Link, and it is like read by everyone. It comes out every weekend, and it's literally read by like everyone. It's the paper, and it's mostly ads. It's like a lot of articles, but mostly ads. And so I started advertising in there, like a quarter page ad. We started doing articles also. Like, so every other week we put in an article. And people, it's like name recognition. Like, if you're in that newspaper, you are legit.
That's so
and
smart.
So that has been, so that's been a really, really good, very specific to where I live kind of thing. But I've had like this like outreach coordinator from a different practice who like, I don't know if he's Jewish or whatever. I don't know how he would have read, I guess he is. I don't know how he would have read the newspaper, but he sent me a picture. He's like, hey, I saw your ad. And he like sent me a picture over email. And I'm like, we've literally never communicated before, but I'm so glad he saw it.
Yeah, I mean, and I think those hyper local publications, we have a few of those here too, where a lot of them are ads, but you know, you're in there with the dentist that everyone goes to and the pediatrician that everyone goes to, and your name is just around. I think that makes a huge difference. And, you know,
it's like psychological.
Yeah. I mean, you're just
like,
seeing
if you're in it, you must be real.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
you're
like,
not just like some random person. And I don't know about like, all of the churches here, but I know that there was this one church that used to refer me clients that used to pay for the first 2 sessions of a teenager under 16, like, care. If they couldn't afford it, they would. And like, I think a lot of times there are situations like that too. When you reach out to like religious organizations, sometimes there's like special funds or different things when they send people. Can be a good way to do it. But that's awesome.
All of those, so that's been really good. And then that causes word of mouth too. Like, people will say, oh, you should, what about that practice, collaborative mind, something, I saw them in the Jewish Link. And then someone will be like, oh, like and you know, people will see something and they'll save it for later. Like, I had someone call me and she's like, you were advertising a specific type of group last year and I saved it because I thought this will be good for my daughter for next year. So are you going to have it this year? It was like a transition to like the year in Israel, like the year abroad kind of thing, not college. So it was like very demographic specific, and she wanted to know if we were going to have it again, kind of thing. Yeah. And so we were very much like, so I was like, I'm not sure yet if we're going to have it, but that's cool that she saved it and like reached out to me.
I mean, and like,
later.
I think groups or workshops or whatever, you know, a lot of times those resources are very hard to find because a lot of therapists don't kind of advertise groups, and especially groups for teens. And I know, like, I hosted this mother and daughter retreat once for teen moms and daughters. This was like 6 years ago. Okay. This was a long time ago. Okay. And they did a ropes course. They did, like, it was a whole thing, and we put it on. It was a ton of work, and I didn't do it ever again. Not because I didn't want to, but I had kids, and it was a whole thing, and it was a lot of work. Okay. But that one event, that one retreat, single-handedly, I still get calls about it, which I'm like, we haven't done this in like 6 years. And it must be because it's like the search engine optimization. I don't know. Or there's just not very many teen retreats. Like, we haven't done it in so long for mothers and daughters. But like, whereas if it was just like another therapist who works with moms and daughters, like, if you know what I mean? Like, if you have somewhat of a unique offering, sometimes people remember it in a different way.
That is so I love that idea.
Yeah, you should do it.
So great.
It was really fun. It was a blast,
Sounds
but
like
it was
so much
so
work.
much. The biggest thing is like when we did it, I teamed up with a really good friend of mine who owns kind of an adventure-based company. And they do ropes course and challenges and everything, which was amazing. And I like adore her. But there was always a little part of me that was like, we're taking kids on a ropes course. And even though we had all the liability and everything covered, it was still like, this just makes me anxious. Everything went great. We had an amazing weekend. And I was like, and now I maybe don't need to do this again. But there's a way, tons of other ways. Like I feel like mother's daughter retreats, like, teenhood is a tough time for moms and their daughters. And I think it's definitely an area where just kind of one-off retreats for moms and daughters, even if you're doing like, a manicure bar and like a breakout session where they get to talk or whatever. Like it doesn't have to be a ropes course, although it was really cool. So
yeah. Wow,
anyway,
really
we
cool.
could talk for so many hours. And number one. Number two, you're going to have a lot of trainings on this so people can really dive deep in if they want to include groups or teen groups in their practice, which is great. So we're going to make sure to link your website below. But the question I always like to ask everyone is, if you were starting your private practice today, what do you wish you had known before now?
Okay. So many things.
I know, right?
If I was starting so just to clarify, my group practice or just my individual?
Let's go with your group. So if you were starting a group private practice today, what do you wish you had known back then?
Well, this is going to sound really nitty gritty, but I recently was fined for not having workers' comp insurance.
Oh,
so I would like to have known that I needed that.
Yeah.
So I think, and I'm now working with someone who's like auditing all that stuff to make sure I'm like really compliant. So that would be something as like getting that person, who, and I thought I did, like I had a lawyer, I had the people, but nobody really told me. And I think it's like knowing that you don't know what you don't know, because we're not trained for business. We're trained for therapists to be therapists. And so getting like those business people in place to really help you set it up in a very, very legal, ethical way.
Love it.
Is definitely one thing I wish I had known.
I feel like there's always more, but that's a great one.
Yeah. I also, something that I like when thinking about this podcast and about like advice, I don't know if maybe you're going to ask me this.
Yeah.
Like,
well, just go for it.
Advice I would
what
give?
Advice would you give to someone starting out?
Yeah. So definitely position yourself with people who you want to be like.
Yeah.
And that might be paying to be in the room with them. It might be, actually that is a thing. Like it might be paying to be in the room with them, but do invest in it anyway. As well as get mentors. I'm in American Group Psychotherapy Association, like it's a big association. And through being a member of it, so it's a paid membership, but I actually got a mentor. I've been working with her for like 3.5, 4 years now.
Oh, wow.
And we meet for free once a month. She's amazing. She's like 40 plus years experience as a group therapist. And she just like gives me knowledge for free. So, being able to just take advantage of those kinds of opportunities, get mentors, get, there's like all different people. I don't know if I could like plug other
100%
things.
You can. We'll put all the links in
Kelly,
here.
Right? Like she has like Private Practice Academy. So like, when I signed on for that in like, right when I started, like September 2021 or something, right when it started. And the reason I signed on for that was to be part of her Facebook community, because I wanted to be in the room with other people who were like-minded to me. And I've actually gotten a lot of referrals from those people too, because we've connected. We've had networking calls. I'm part of also Stabilize and Scale, which is by Katie Keats-May. Do you know her? And Shailene Kite. So their program business, it's like how to put it's group private practice, but it's not only group private practice. It's like once you're already in a group private practice, it's like how do you really stabilize and then scale? And so I was a brand new practice when I joined their program, but I was like, they're targeting themselves for 7-figure to 7-figure businesses. I am not a 7-figure business yet. But I was like, but why don't I get myself in the room with all these 7-figure business badass women
Yes.
who I can then learn from and not make the same mistakes they made
Right.
because I'm learning from it for the first time.
Right.
And that has been amazing and totally has transformed my just like the way that I run my business.
So important.
And so I think just thinking about like who you want to be interacting with, who you want to be learning from, and then not just like watching their Instagram, but actually like investing in what they have to offer. So like 100%. I know you've got, right? Like you've got your course and like people can watch your content on Instagram and get, I'm sure like a lot of good information. Right. But it's like, like 25% of what they're really going to get from investing in your course. And so I think for me, it was like just that, like positioning myself among people that I want them to know me. Like I think Katie, I like Katie Keith. Like I think she's awesome. And like I'm so happy she knows me. You know, like it's just cool to like have those connections with people who are really going somewhere because you're also going to be really going somewhere.
Yes,
and so like
100%. I mean, I think it's like what do they say? Like we're most like the 5 people we surround ourselves most by. And I think that's so true when it comes to a career perspective too. You know, if you're like surrounding yourself by other therapists who you admire, whose clinical skills are amazing or their business acumen is amazing, like all of those little tiny hacks, like even just the things we talked about today with like tagging someone else on the listserv, you know, or replying back all, like those are little things you might not think of. But if you hear someone say it, you're like, oh, that's so obvious. Why didn't I think of that?
Yeah.
You know? So.
Yeah. Right. And I think a lot of times, like when I because a lot of times, like with consulting, like I'm not necessarily giving them, like you give people like, here's your roadmap, right? Is that what you call it?
Yeah.
Your roadmap, right? Like I don't, in my consultation, and that's why it's not like a course, like I will give them like practical advice and be like, you should sign up for Kelley Stevens. Like thing. Is it Stevens? Now I see it says Stevens on here.
Oh, that's just.
What is your last name?
It is Stevens. It's literally
Stevens. That's right. Okay, got it.
We're on Zoom, and that definitely means that I typed it wrong.
Okay. I was saying it. I was like, am I getting it wrong?
No, it is Stevens. It definitely is. But
okay, great. So great. I'll tell people like, oh, it sounds like you would really benefit from signing up for this person's thing, or like this is something. You know, so they'll have, or like the private practice exchange, you know, like they'll have those info that you should seek out. But oftentimes people don't even know where to get that information. So I'm often like that first line of like, I've done a lot of the research. I've been part of these programs. I can tell you which ones, like, I'm like almost like a consultant, right? Like for what direction to go in. And what did I bring that up?
Well, I think we were just talking about surrounding yourself by other therapists who you can learn from. And the importance of that. And
but often the pushback that I get is, oh, it's too expensive. I can't do, you know, and so that's the thing is like really believing that you can and you deserve to invest in yourself so that you really, your business will be better.
100. I literally, I get that, sure. You know, from a perspective of just like, I recently started working with a mentor for my private practice pro business and someone who's been in the industry, not like a private practice, but of Instagram content and scaling an online business. And it's expensive, let me tell you. And but you know, a lot of times what I remind myself is the money that I spend on investing in my business makes me more money than I invested. And you know, I think sometimes we forget that like the reason we invest in whether it's coaching, whether it's consulting, whether it's courses, it's like you're doing that to get to a goal, ideally that's going to pay for the thing that you're investing in now, but you have to have enough faith in believing it. And look, we all like I've made investments in courses or coaches or, you know, different consultants where it was a waste of money. And so I think it's like you also have to do your due diligence. And that's the benefit of like having a friend who's been in someone's course, who has been in someone's mastermind and being able to say like, no, this was very worthwhile, you know? So.
Right. And it's funny because I actually started my consulting, like official consulting business after having a call with someone who was like looking into, I think she wanted to know like which direction to go into for starting a group practice. And I was like, oh, I actually like have done a few different courses and I've like, whatever, I know about this. Like happy to chat with you. I was on maternity leave, so I was bored. I'm feeling very giving. So I had like an hour phone call with her. And she was like, you should like charge people for that.
Yeah, you should.
Advice. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, like I would absolutely pay for it. I was like, are you serious? So I started. So I was like, you know what? I'm on maternity leave. Let me make myself a website. And that's where I started, because I was I have, I think because I'm such a hype woman, and I'm always like, you gotta raise your rates, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. People reach out to me a lot. A lot. Like last night, like 4 different people reached out to me who like I know through people. It's not like random. It's sometimes it's strangers, but a lot of times it's not. And I was finding myself like burning out from giving so much time about information and resources that I had paid money to learn. And I was like sharing it for free. And plus my own like trials and errors of going through this, and doing this. And so I started actually like not offering to speak to anybody anymore, and saying like, like I would love to talk to you about this. I offer consultation, and then I just send them the link to my website, and they are able to say yes or no. And honestly, it's fine if they say no. Like then I have that time back.
100%. I started doing the same thing, and it's hard. Like I used to take so many networking meetings, and people like, I get those messages all the time from people like, hey, can I pick your brain? Can I pick your brain about something? And nowadays, like, I don't know about you, but for me, like, I have to go through the filter of my kids. Like, it's like every hour that I am either not earning or I'm not with them, like, I want to be using for my self-care. Like, I have such a limited amount of childcare per week. Like, if I'm not getting paid for it, or I'm not like using it in some way to grow myself, then at this point, like, I have to use that time to go exercise or go to the grocery store or whatever, just because my time is so limited. It's different so times in life, it 100%. Wasn't that way. But anyway.
So I still do like 1 to 2 networking calls a week, because I'm trying to also fill my clinicians' caseload. So that's part of my, back to marketing again, like part of my marketing strategy is having those calls. But I mean, this is like side note, but have you read the book Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell?
No, but I probably should.
Okay, you need to read it. It's very good. It's about being like the founder and CEO of your own company and how to basically buy back your time, which I think you're probably doing a lot of by having employees doing certain tasks. But it's changed my perspective on like how my calendar works.
Oh my God, I need to read it. That's like literally,
you have to read
like
it.
What I've been working so much with my consultant and coach on is just like how, as my business has grown, I was wearing way too many hats and trying to make sure that I like I always know time is my most valuable commodity. And like, it's the one thing I can give to my kids that's super important to me. And so that's a whole nother episode, and we're gonna have to end because we gotta go maximize our time. But thank you so much for coming on. We're gonna have to do like a part 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. So thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Are you wondering how to promote and fill your private practice? Look no further. Kelley's comprehensive online course, Marketing for Therapists, will equip you with the essential marketing strategies to build a thriving 6-figure therapy practice. Don't miss out on this opportunity for success. Check out the show notes to sign up.
Therapists, do you want more clients at your full cash rate? Mentaya is a platform that navigates out-of-network benefits for clients. They get clients on average 70% back on therapy by filing claims and chasing down insurance companies. They handle literally everything so that you can focus on what matters. Click the link in the show notes to learn more and get 1 month free using the code PRO.